You're listening to Sweet Life, the show that helps you find and walk your own special path. I'm Brooke Peterson. Here on Sweet Life, we like to explore unconventional career possibilities, self-discovery, professional development, and more. Whatever helps and whatever works to make it sweet. Have you ever heard, and really honestly, if you haven't, then where have you been? Because this is pretty common knowledge at this point in time, that stress is a killer. Stress, folks, is a bad, bad thing. In fact, the Mayo Clinic and many others say that stress can lead to heart disease, heart attacks, strokes, and diabetes. And that's just the big stuff. There's lots of little stuff in there, too. Learning how to manage stress can save your life. Literally, it can save your life and make it much more fun, too. Who likes to be stressed? It doesn't feel very good. Today, we have Eden Garcia-Balis. She's the executive director of the Pasadena Mental Health Center. She has worked in the mental health field for over 10 years. And she is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a very strong commitment to supporting the healthy development of children, teenagers, and adults. And one thing we can all deal with, or one thing that we have to all deal with, from our first rocking horse to our last rocking chair, is stress. She is here today to give us a few pointers on how to handle the normal daily and the larger life stress we are all confronted with. Nobody is immune, so listen up. Thank you for joining us, Eden Garcia-Balis.
Hi, Brooke. Thanks. I am really excited to be here, and you are absolutely right. Stress affects everybody, and there are some really easy things that people can do to reduce their stress level. Anxiety is a higher level of stress. One of the things that I always talk about is physical exercise. It doesn't necessarily have to be going to the gym. Some people like to work out, and that's great. But there's other forms of exercise as well. If you like going to a dance class, if you like yoga, anything like that also works. What happens with stress and anxiety is that we tend to bottle it up inside, and then that leads to the kind of stuff that you were talking about. So it's very important to do something physical.
Okay, and it doesn't matter if it's fast or slow, like yoga or tai chi or
correct.
Boxing.
Right.
Right. Get it out.
Just get it out. Caffeine is another big one that I think people don't realize they drink a lot of. That's one of the questions I always asked when I saw patients is how much drink, caffeine, soda, coffee are you drinking? And I would get people in that would say, oh, I have Monster drinks, so those kind of drinks all the time, without realizing that that can also produce anxiety or keep stress level up.
Could that also be sugar related, maybe?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I know sugar's obviously huge in sodas and stuff. And I'm learning recently that sugar, I mean, I have a sweet tooth. I'll just admit it. I love my sweets. But I've recently learned how damaging and hard sugar is, and is almost like a drug like anything else.
Right. We begin to crave it. Yes. Just like caffeine. You're absolutely correct. Just like everything else. I believe in balance. That's the big thing is, I think it's really hard to say don't have any sugar or don't have any caffeine. If you can do that, great. But it's okay to have a cup of coffee in the morning or here and there, or it's okay to have a piece of chocolate if you're feeling stressed. Mm-hmm. But it's not okay to have the whole, go on a binge. Right. Exactly.
Dang.
And I think that's how some people cope maladaptively, is having the whole box of cookies or more than one soda. So that is a way to cope, but it's not a good way to cope.
Right. Sure. Now, so how would you define stress? I mean, how do people know? Because these days, I feel like most people, and I only say that because I know I do, I feel like I live in kind of a constant state of anxiety of some sort. Yes. Now, what makes something just normal life versus stress versus anxiety?
That's a good question, and it varies from person to person. So when you ask that question, the first thing I thought of is being in sync with your body. Mm-hmm. So knowing what your body is telling you. For some people, they recognize their stress when they start clenching their fists or clenching their teeth, or sweating, or their heart is beating. Mm-hmm. So for everybody, it's a little bit different. But some people don't even realize when they're stressed or when they're anxious.
Yeah.
They notice the bigger things, like when they can't sleep, or when
they have a shooting pain down their left arm.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So it's being aware early on and doing something about it then.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I know, like you said, the clenched jaw or
Yes.
mouth. I don't know that I would even realize when I was doing that. So I absolutely agree that it is completely individual, and people sort of act out in different ways, or their body
Right.
reacts in different ways. But as a marriage and family therapist, how many of the issues that you see could you sort of liken back to a stress-based issue? Are they the main culprits of?
It is, and it can be, absolutely, because there's a variety of, well, if we look at stress and anxiety on a continuum, so stress can be, something that can be managed, but it can lead to some pretty big traumatic event that is more of a very big anxiety level kind of issue. So asking questions about history is very important. Identifying how people deal with anxiety and stress is very important. And not forgetting that something that happened in the past can still be affecting current life. Even if perhaps you think you dealt with it, sometimes issues get re-triggered or something like that. So it's important to look at it and talk about it and see what needs to be done to resolve it.
Interesting. Now, I know you also mentioned in your intro that you work with kids as well as young adults and teenagers. And being at PCC, a lot of our population here are students and of a certain younger age. And for somebody who's sort of coming into their own and learning about all of this stuff and recognizing their body's signals, what can you tell people to look out for most, especially when there are high stress times like the beginning of a semester, the end, where a lot of change is happening and everything's crazy?
Right. I think that's the time when students are most stressed is at the beginning of a semester or at the end.
I can confirm that.
During finals. So I would say put a plan in place. That's very, very important. Okay. What is it that you need to do to make sure that you get your papers done? Or what is it that you need to do to make sure that you ace a test? Sometimes the anxiety is because of an irrational belief. So if you think that you're going to fail, But as you look back at your GPA, you have a 3.2 GPA. The chances of you failing are very slim. What we see is that we have evidence that shows the contrary. So it is challenging those kind of thoughts and really kind of identifying, okay, is my thought process really logical here, or am I being kind of flooded with fear because of this stressor, because of the anxiety of failing or not doing a paper or something like that?
Right. Okay. So would it be along the lines of, like you said, planning ahead, I guess, essentially, and i.e. not procrastinating. Right. Which is so easy to do for some people like myself. And what other things can they do to help them sort of relax? Right.
So, I go back to balance, and I think that's the main thing that if there's any takeaway here, it's that. So if you find that you're always studying and always in the books, then it's going to be important to take some time away from that and do something that you like to do, something that's fun, something that's social. The opposite is also true, though. If you find that all you're doing is spending time with friends and just socializing, but your academics are taking a back seat, then, the opposite needs to happen. You need to focus more on the academics. So it's important to kind of look at where can I find the balance? How can I make this look balanced? And that will reduce anxiety and stress.
Oh, that sounds so great in theory.
And it takes work. I know it. It takes work.
Well, my thing, I hear that. I hear all the time from different sources that I need to have more fun, do more fun things. But how do you do that when you feel like you have no time? How do you do that?
Yeah. It's making time. And you're right. I think in today's society, gosh, we are doing so many things. I'm sure that some of your students are going to school, have a job, have a family, and juggling all of that is a lot of work. So where is the fun in there? Mm-hmm. But it is important to carve out time to have some fun, or else stress and anxiety, and then then those serious issues occur.
Yeah. So it sounds like you really need to be good at time management too.
Yes.
And organizing yourself.
Right.
Okay. All right. So let's see. What are some other triggers? I know money is a big trigger for most people.
Money is a big trigger for most people. Sex in couples is a big trigger. Family is another big trigger. That can be a source of support, but for many, it can also be quite anxiety provoking to be around family around the holidays or something like that.
Oh, yes, the holidays.
Yes.
So when you feel a trigger going on, do you talk to people about like breathing exercise?
Yes.
Do you have like techniques or exercises for people?
Okay, so there are definitely breathing techniques. The classic breathing in with your nose, breathing out with your mouth, doing this slowly, making sure that it's coming from the stomach so that you don't hyperventilate. But, that's important. I think the first thing is recognizing when you're feeling stressed or anxious, and then putting some of that in place. So like doing those breathing techniques, even in class, it's okay if you get your syllabus and you're looking at all the things due and are like, oh my God, just take a quick second and do a little bit of breathing. Mm-hmm. The positive self-talk is another good one, which is, I'm going to be okay. This isn't my first semester in school. I can do this, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I also don't think that we realize the power our thoughts have. And we often go to the negative, like, oh my God, I'm never going to get this done. And oh my gosh, and that kind of stuff it doesn't help. And it does the contrary. It makes things worse. And we feel more stressed and anxious.
Yeah.
So being able to stop that as soon as you look at the syllabus and say, oh my God, that you go, whoa,
yeah.
let me back this up.
Rein it in.
Right, rein it in, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's important. Guided imagery, something like that, whether it's imagining yourself, it can be something more professional, like a tape or something that you listen to that's audio, but it can be something very simple like imagining yourself somewhere that's very comfortable or very relaxing for you. Is it the beach? Is it the mountains? What's the temperature like? What are you feeling? So having all of those different things and just taking a moment will help people center themselves, focus, and be less stressed and anxious.
What do you think about pets?
Oh, I love pets.
Yeah, me too.
Love pets. And they're very, very helpful with helping relieving stress and anxiety.
Yeah. I just sort of feel like, well, I don't have my dog anymore, but when I did, I just used to love, oh, poor thing. She must have been strangled 10 times in her life. Just like petting and holding and just there's something about the action of just the fur. Or I don't know what it is.
Absolutely.
It's just helpful.
Oh, totally. Totally. And it can be any pet. I know many people love dogs because they just get so happy. When you come through the door, there is that unconditional love, but it can be any pet. Just having that contact, as you said, is very, very important, and I think helps many people.
Yeah, I think elderly people especially, not only for the stress, but maybe companionship too.
Right.
Pets are great. Go get a pet.
Go get a pet.
We are going to take a very quick break. Don't you kind of want to dance when you hear that music? That's a stress reliever.
Yeah, it sure is. Absolutely.
Dancing. Music I've also learned recently, and that's true. I remember, oh, by the way, you're listening to Sweet Life. I'm Brooke Peterson, and today we're talking about stress management. And I was just thinking, preparing for the show today, looking at a bunch of lists and articles and so forth. One of the things they suggest is music.
Yes.
Listening to music. And I guess for some people, maybe classical, something like really relaxing is good. For me, it's just great to have a good, song to bounce around to and jump around to. The songs that you can sing and sort of scream at the top of your lungs. That's fun, too.
Well, and that's fun because you're getting that stress out.
Yeah.
So it really depends on the person. What kind of music is going to help them relieve that stress. For some people, you're right. They need that really calming to kind of calm them down. And for others, they want something that they can get the stress out by singing or jumping around or screaming, whatever helps.
Whatever works.
Right.
Right.
So you brought up music, which is a good thing. But it can also be music is very powerful in that it can also affect mood. What some people have noticed is there there is some music that actually, or maybe lyrics that bring people down. So it's important to also look at that. Maybe before a test, it may not be the best time to kind of listen to your slow and sad.
Right, the breakup song.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes I do want something really slow. Again, it probably does go back to mood. What am I in the mood for, and what seems to help? So maybe it's just becoming more aware of what you need at what time. Looking at a person's life, why does it take us so long to learn this stuff?
It's not something that's taught in school, unfortunately. I don't think that it's something that is in any curriculum. So it's either learned through, parents or a psychology class, or when you go to therapy. So I think that's why it takes some time. And the other thing is that it does take work. So some people would just rather take care of whatever they need to do and deal with the anxiety, as opposed to reducing the anxiety and putting things in place so that the anxiety never gets to that level.
Do you think that parents are, speaking of, do you think that parents are aware that that's part of their job, to help kids learn how to deal with stress? I don't have a child, so I can't really say firsthand. Is that part of the agenda?
I think it should be. I absolutely think it should be. But I don't think that all parents know that.
Yeah. Maybe the parents don't even know how to deal.
Right. And, if children see their parents always anxious, then they're going to be anxious. Or if they see mom and dad cope with anxiety with alcohol, then, that's what they're going to learn to do when they get anxious, not maybe as a child, but as they get older. So there's that at play as well. That's important for parents to realize, that the way that you deal with anything, right now we're talking about anxiety, but that, we're the model for our children, and how you deal with anxiety, how you deal with, how you communicate with all of that, your child is learning, whether it's conscious or unconscious, and then will replicate unless they have some other coping skills.
Okay.
Now,
as a parent, what are some tips for parents and to teach their children stress management?
So I think it's important to also watch your children. Some people are anxious in nature. And it's important to then teach children. I think you should teach all children, but there are some kids that are just more anxious than others. Important to start it from the beginning, like that positive self-talk, that self-confidence, that everything we tell our children, they take in. So even when a parent is angry and says something that they don't mean, that's going to affect the child, and not just self-esteem, but then that may create some anxiety. So going back to your question, it is helping our children be self-confident. It is teaching some of the same skills that we're talking about, doing breathing, doing some imagery. And for them, it may be just something simple, like imagining that you're at the playground and that you're playing with friends. But I think it's also important to teach them how to identify when they're stressed and what they need to do about it.
Yeah. So what are some signs that a parent can look for to tell when their child is stressed?
So with children, sometimes it's acting out. And even with adults, sometimes
sort of
it's
like
acting
mouthy?
out. Being mouthy, or maybe throwing toys around, or
that's a pretty good sign,
right? Or sometimes it's the opposite. Now you have a child that's withdrawn. So it's a change in personality, I would say. That's probably the best indicator, because every child is different. So if you notice something different, it's a good time to have a conversation with your child and say, "Hey, I noticed that you're not playing with your toys as often. What's going on?"
And what the child's like, "Oh, nothing."
Then I would say, I think there's something that's bothering you. Or maybe, if it was like something minor, I may leave it alone. And then if I continue to see it, then probe a little bit more. As, we all have we ebb and flow in terms of energy level and mood. So it just may be something like that, and just letting it be. But if it continues, then checking it out and talking further about it.
Okay. Now, in general, For red flags, we've talked about, I guess, overeating, taking it out on food.
Yes.
We've mentioned alcoholism.
Right.
What are some other, I guess, telltale signs or red flags for how we're not coping with stress very well?
So those are two really, really big ones. The overeating, drinking, withdrawing is a big one. So if you notice that you're just not wanting to do anything with friends anymore, or not returning the phone calls like you used to friends and family, that's another sign. If you're feeling angry, that's another sign. Aggression, that you notice you're snapping more often than usual, or that it's coming out in that way. Road rage.
Oh,
that's a good one, right? Yes. So those are all signs.
What happens if you live in Los Angeles?
Yeah, it's tough. There is, driving around. You're absolutely right.
I was fine when I got in the car.
Right.
And then
tough to contain that anxiety or stress when you're driving. Yeah, and you're right.
Yeah, that's why I live in Pasadena. I left Hollywood a couple years ago. Well, we only have a few more minutes, so just to sort of begin to wrap up, so far we've talked about breathing.
Yes.
We've talked about music.
Yes.
We've talked about visualization.
Yes.
Exercise, the positive self-talk. That's a good 5 right there.
Yes.
Anything else we should throw in there in the mix?
Those 5 are the top 5.
Yeah, they seem pretty solid. And
Yes.
it seems like each one of those can sort of, spread out into other little areas. So, just to get back to you real quick, I know you're at Pasadena Mental Health Center.
Yes.
And this is such a great facility for the local area. Tell us a little bit about that for the students here or people in the community who might be able to take advantage of it.
Sure. So we talked about the 5 ways to deal with stress, but one thing we didn't talk about is psychotherapy as a way to deal with stress.
Oh,
so
right, yeah.
if you find that doing these things isn't helping, or that whatever you're doing, your anxiety is still through the roof, or that you can't find a stressor and you feel anxious. There's nothing really that you can say, hey, this is why I'm stressed.
Right.
Then it may be a good idea to seek some help from a professional.
Or if you have so many things going
Yes.
on that's so stressful.
That's true too, where you just can't quite figure out how to manage it all or kind of prioritize it. That would be a good time to go to therapy. Yeah. And at the Pasadena Mental Health Center, we do talk therapy. We do see many clients that are dealing with anxiety. I would say anxiety and depression are the main 2 that we see. We work on a sliding fee scale, so we're able to provide psychotherapy at a low cost.
And that is great for all of you students out there, as well as other people who might not have, the primo corporate health insurance.
Right.
Yeah.
As a student.
And what's also really good about this is that I think it's not just Pasadena that has facilities like these. So even if you're on the East Coast or other places besides LA, there's probably something very similar to you local that you can look into and find for yourself if you need just an ear, some guidance. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We have been talking to Eden Garcia-Balis, Executive Director of the Pasadena Mental Health Center. You've been listening to Sweet Life. I'm Brooke Peterson. You can like us on Facebook by searching Sweet Life Radio Show. Until next time, make it sweet.